I have nothing to give you that you don't already have. It's not possible to give you anything that you don't already have. You come preloaded. When you were born, the full potential comes with you. Everything you'll ever be, everything you could ever be, everything you definitely will be, and all the things you could have been and will never be is all right there. Your inner self, your true self, your non-limited self doesn't lack anything. Of course, you have needs. You have to have food, you have to have water, you have to be taking care of. A little infant is completely dependent, but that does not in any way mean that everything isn't there. That's how it's taken. Dependence is mistaken for lacking something. But a newborn infant doesn't lack anything. The same way as the biggest tree you'll find in the sweetest field, the biggest, broadest, started as a tiny, tiny, tiny seed. And everything that tree is was in that seed. So your potential is not something you add later. And that's why nothing can be given to you, added to you, removed from you. They can take out your spleen. They can take out your appendix. They can take out this and that, but they're not really removing anything from you, because you're organically whole. That's the nature of a human being. Your essential qualities, abilities, capabilities, everything about you, everything that you are, and everything that you could be is present on every level, in every way, from the first second till the last breath. After the last breath, you continue, but the potentials change in the sense of what can manifest and what can't. On this plane, on the physical level, the earthly level, whatever you want to call it, the range of what can manifest, the range of what can come out of you, is the interaction between all your potential and this level. So far, there, in our time at least, meaning recorded time, we know of no 30-foot human beings. It's not how this plane lets your physical growth potential operate. Maybe there were in some other era we don't know about. But in some other dimension, on some other planet, in some other universe, in this universe, on some other planet, maybe human life forms are 30 feet high is typical, instead of the typical 5 to 6 feet of this planet. Who cares? The point is, you're a fully developed seed. As your life unfolds, whatever happens, whatever you do, is the demonstration of that potential. It isn't about going out and grabbing something and then sewing it on, and now you have something you didn't already have. It's not, the point here is it's not possible for you to have anything that you didn't come in with. Everything you have, everything you are, everything you can is already present at birth. This is not the conventional view. This is not the common view. This is not the everyday view. This is how it actually works. The everyday view is a newborn baby is a blank slate of flailingness. It's a very denigrating view. Can't be true, obviously. How could it grow into a child, into a teenager, into an adult if it's just a mass of flailing whatever, and what you load it up with is what it becomes? It's all genetic, even on the level of DNA, it's all genetically present at birth. DNA is just the physical and this plane aspect of it. They haven't even discovered it yet, that genetics is everything on this level. There's this constant debate that's been going on for a few hundred years about nature and nurture, about how much is environment and how much it's genetics. They'll keep debating it forever because they're not asking it from a spiritual perspective, and they don't take into account what the mystics of all the ages have explained. There's no debate, it's genetic. Genetics is 99.9%. Every thought you have is involved with your genetic load. Every feeling, even your experiences. You're not operating in a vacuum. You're not accumulating. You're bringing forth, bringing out what's already present, already loaded in, already essential, definitional, already defines you. Like putting a DVD into a DVD player or a preloaded iPod. You're an iPod. You're preloaded. You just press the start button. That's called birth. So that has vast implications in hundreds of ways, if not thousands of ways. We're not talking about the implications, we're talking about the structure. The implications it has for fate, destiny, free will could be talked about for days, weeks, years. But we've got an hour or two. So. But at least see yourself as a fully capable human being, divine being. Don't see yourself the way you've been taught to, as you have to acquire this and you have to learn that, and then you'll be on your way. Or until you get this degree or have learned this skill, you're not who you're supposed to be yet. You're always exactly who you're supposed to be. You came ready for that. You're learning all the time. But your learning is a process that you don't experience in the way it really manifests, it really occurs. You're learning not because something from the outside is being put in, but because something from the inside is being brought out, brought forth. The word education comes from Latin. It means to elicit, to bring forth. It doesn't mean to stuff in. It means to bring out. So when you get educated in any way, and every day you're being educated in one way or another, everyone, and we're all educating each other. But you're not going around getting loaded up with more. More is being elicited. Aspects from inside are being opened up that have simply been waiting as potential. And in a short human lifetime, 80, 70, 90 years, there's only so much that's going to come out. There isn't time for more. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't see rightly that whatever comes out in that short span, that isn't the definition of you. That's just what happened in this lifetime. The definition of you is far more gigantic because you're a spiritual being. So the potential in you is your individual potential, but it is part and parcel and representative of the potential of the whole human species. So if one person can do it, that means you have that potential in you. There was only one Leonardo da Vinci. He did things you take for granted that you don't even know come from one guy. He had a huge influence. You know who invented scissors? Leonardo da Vinci. You know who invented the helicopter? Leonardo da Vinci. He didn't have a working prototype, but his draft models were workable with some adjustments. If the prototype could be put together, they've done it. It will fly. Not exactly as his drawings indicate. There would have had to have been some adjustments, but if he had the right materials, he would have figured that out. So a few people stand out because they invented scissors and helicopters and were great artists. The names of history, the names you're taught in grade school. And you're taught to think of these people as extraordinary, as having something you don't. All I'm saying to you is you have all that in you exactly the same. If Leonardo da Vinci can do it, that means it's in you. You won't necessarily be able to do it. It won't line up like it did for that guy. But if you think for 1 second that you don't have everything that Leonardo da Vinci had in him, if you think for 1 second that you don't have everything Buddha had in him, if you think for 1 second that you don't have everything and anything, every name in history had in them as a living human being, then understand that you do. The full potential is in every single person, no matter how lame, damaged, disabled, physically handicapped, mentally impaired. The same potential is in every single person because it can't be in this one and not in that one. It's easy to understand that every blade of grass is essentially the same, but we don't think of ourselves that way. But that's what I'm saying. Leonardo was one blade of grass, you're another. There's no difference except he did certain things, you're doing certain other things. You don't know what the future will bring. You don't know what's going to come out of you before this life is through. I'll prove it to you. Close your eyes for a sec and just be quiet inside and really, really with clarity, think back 10 years. Bring yourself back to who you were and what you were doing and how you viewed life 10 years ago, a full decade ago. It doesn't have to be exact. I don't mean count the years and calculate, because then you won't feel the point here. But in a very relaxed way. Just remember who you were and what you expected of life and how you saw things 10 years ago. And if that picture can clarify, if you can remember well or well enough, you can probably notice, I suspect most of you will, without difficulty, be able to notice that most of how you saw your future and what you thought you would be like down the road just 10 years ago, which isn't that long a time, you couldn't have imagined being who you are today. It didn't occur to you that you'd be the kind of person doing the kind of things you're doing just 10 years later. Because the potential manifested, and that brought all kinds of different, and in many cases, new things, new thoughts, new ways of seeing, new feelings, new experiences, new people. And now you're who you are at this moment. But 10 years ago, you couldn't have imagined being the you are today. You can open your eyes just to give you a taste, the flavor of it. That just in your own life, just going back 5 years, 10 years, you can kind of capture the sense of this. And then play it ahead. 10 years from now, you have no idea. Sitting here now, you have no idea who you'll be 10 years from now. You'll be you, but you'll be very different from how you are now. If you were able to remember back and have some clear picture, aren't you very different than you were 10 years ago? Something is very much the same. A lot of you is very much the same, and a lot of you is very much different. Because this interplay of all the potential of all of humanity is going on in you all the time. You're seeing it the way you were taught to see it, as just your little segmented life, segmented off, meaning segmented off from everybody else. Everybody else is we're all little separate units running around, but that's not what's going on. That's the segmented view of life. You're part of the whole human dimension, the whole human totality, humanity as a whole. You're an emanation of something vast, beginningless, and endless. Not the human part, that's limited. But the part that's spirit itself, the part that's divine, the part that has to do with the eternal and the infinite. So at least get out of the conventional view that you've been handed of how to view yourself, and view yourself more correctly, more accurately as the vast potential that you are. Not as possession, not that you have, that you are. People think of potential as like an object in our time, like it's a resource. You'll do something with it and get more money. But it's vast as existence. You're the emanation of the potential of existence in the form called you at this juncture. You experience it as your life. But that's only from your point of view. It's not your life. It's existence manifesting. It's the whole experiencing its parts. It's everything all together from one point of view. Stop falling for this idea that you're a human being seeking the truth, or a human being wanting to know God or find reality. You're a divine being. There's no question about it. You're a spiritual being. Having an experience of discovery in all its aspects, the mundane and the profound, the everyday and the eternal. They're not separate. They're not antithetical. They're not one or the other. You're big enough to handle all of it. Okay.
Swamiji, Aureliano has a question. Go ahead, you're unmuted. Ananda Dave, can you check? We don't hear anything.
Hello, hello.
There we go. Oh, we lost him.
Yeah?
Yep.
Yes?
Yes, thank you.
So, beloved master, here I wrote this note to make sure my words get through my social barriers. I wanted to report that I am experiencing lately the persistence of a pattern in me that creates a lot of frustration and unsatisfaction and anger, and often prevents me to have a normal life or to function in a social environment. I often observe how much the fear of rejection seems to have a hold on me, whether I'm around people or I'm by myself. This also feels excessively exhausting and leads often to massive procrastination or actively avoiding taking responsibility for my own life. I tend to want to deal with it on my own, but that only gets me to merely fulfill my basic needs and subsequently creates a lot of frustration when I feel defeated by my tendencies. So I feel like I may need some external help or encouragement or method to work through those patterns and to keep myself on track in times of inner turmoil. Thank you.
So at the base of what you're saying is the concern with what other people think.
Yeah.
So can you imagine not being concerned with what other people think of you?
Well, I wish I could. It's just that it's an experience that is that I'm not very familiar with.
Yes, that's why I asked it as can you imagine?
Oh, I can try. Yeah.
So you're saying, yes, you can imagine it. You can imagine the possibility where you're not concerned with what others are thinking about you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So don't make it more complicated than it is. There's a lot of self-judgment in what you read out.
Yeah.
And being overly concerned with the opinion of others is not a sin or a crime or somehow defines you as messing up or not good enough. Like you say, it's just a pattern. The pattern is based on something very simple, being very concerned with what you imagine, what you assume others are thinking, what their reaction is to you.
Yeah.
But all of that is assumption. This is what you have to understand. All of that is assumption. You can't know. Even when they tell you, even when how they respond in every way suggests that what they're telling you is accurate, you can't know for sure. So to be concerned too much with the opinion of others is always shaky ground.
Yes.
So this social inhibition, this shyness, is a basic confusion. If I ask you if you're an introverted person or an extroverted person, you're going to answer me that you're an introverted person, right?
Yeah, probably.
And a truly introverted person isn't concerned with too much with the opinions of others. So the real pattern, the real thing that's hard to see from your end and even from the outside is that you're an extroverted person who thinks they're an introvert.
Yeah.
So the trick here is not that you have to take it on as this big psychological set of barriers you have to overcome. You just have to start seeing that you are more drawn to people and more extroverted than you have thought of yourself as. And if you let yourself be more that person, relate more as the extroverted one,
Yeah.
that will make a gigantic difference. And then at the same time, if you realize that concern with what other people are thinking about you is kind of a dead end, and let that drop away more, the whole pattern is handled good enough. It doesn't take years of depth psychology, depth therapy, although I'm all for years of depth therapy if it's required. But this doesn't require that. This is about understanding yourself in a different way. I just saved you 4 years of therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. It's very uplifting to hear of myself that I'm an extrovert, because I tend to be jealous of those extrovert people, and I'm like, I want to be like them, but
Yes.
I don't know how to do it, but
Yeah. It's in you. It's already in you.
Okay.
It's already in you. You just have to come from that. Be that. It'll feel awkward. It'll feel like you're mimicking it. It'll feel like you're trying to be somebody else. But that's just because you're not used to it. You're used to experiencing yourself and acting accordingly as introverted. For a shorthand way to say it. So be the extrovert you are, and it'll become more clear. It'll become more comfortable. But as it becomes more natural and comfortable, because it is more natural for you, because you are, it'll become much more clear, and it won't take a long time if you really do this. It'll become much more clear that it's true, that you're not in the grip of some difficult pattern that can't be resolved. And if you operate more as an extrovert, it doesn't mean the shyness magically goes away. You can be very extroverted and shy at the same time. There's nothing wrong with it. Don't interpret inhibition, shyness, social anxiety, fear as meaning you're introverted. Don't, or that there's anything wrong. This is just about knowing yourself better. But the better you know yourself and the more you see what's possible, you'll come out of that feeling of constriction. You won't feel so shy. You won't feel so held back, because you'll be able to express yourself as you want to without worrying about what's going to be the reaction. It's an experimentation. You have to experiment with yourself. So you experiment with being more extroverted without telling yourself you have to be a certain way. You just let yourself more naturally be who you are. So all you have to remember is two simple things. Concern that what's going on is a concern with what other people think, and that doesn't go anywhere. And the idea that your shyness represents being basically introverted, but you're actually a natural born extroverted person. That's all you have to remember. I'm extrovert, not introvert, and what other people think doesn't really matter.
Okay, well, I'll try that then. Thank you.
You might be the next director of ICODA Brussels, you know. Has that occurred to you? Since ICODA Brussels is moving.
Oh yeah.
You may be asked to take over the reins.
Yeah.
Good. A good job for an extrovert.
Yeah.
All this self-questioning, your questions are always a self-questioning. From the first time you showed up a couple years ago, it's always been this self-questioning going on. And self-questioning will drive you crazy when it goes on and on and on. So this whole thing about actually being an extrovert really, really matters, because the self-questioning is a product of not, in a big, to a large part, is a product of not knowing that you're an extrovert. So things seem off, things don't make sense. So a lot of this self-questioning that drives us crazy, in your case, will go away if you start to see yourself more how you really are and live it. You'll come to the correct conclusion that what you thought was wrong with you isn't. Because the base idea here is that there's something wrong with you. That idea is incorrect. There's nothing going on that is a genuine problem. It's a very common affliction. Most of us have it.
Yeah.
We think there's this whole set of problems that we think is us. And on closer examination, most of it turns out to not be really a problem. Okay?
Swamiji, Noah has a question. Noah, could you go to the cushion, please?
Last week, I felt like I had a very deep knowing that nothing can ever be known. And then this last week, I felt it very, very deeply that nothing is mine. That's it. And it's very, I think I just really get it, that nothing's mine.
Yeah, clearly you must be getting it, because it's not enough to get it as a kind of transcendent understanding. It's not enough to get it as a kind of a profound philosophical sensing. That's, of course, is good. You got to start somewhere. But until you get it in your guts, until it makes you tearful, until you are feeling it wash over you and well up inside you, until you really get it in your guts is the good way, the best way I know to say it. Then it isn't taking you somewhere. This unknowing, non-knowing takes you somewhere. It takes you deeper into the beyond, deeper into the infinite and eternal. It gives you the capability to travel in that way, to experience in that way, and to feel, see, hear, and move in that way, so that you move more and more as no one, as nothing, as one who can recognize that I don't know anything. You can't do that with just an intellectual understanding, although that's where it usually starts for people. And you can't do that even with a profound personal comprehension. It has to be gut level, visceral, grabs you by the throat. That's the feeling, like it grabs you by the throat and yanks you. Then you're really moving. Then you're being pulled into the unknown itself in a deeper way. Because what's the statement, I realize I don't know anything? What's the statement? I realize I am not anything. It's another way to say, I see that the nature of things is the unknown itself. The unknown in this sense never means not known yet. It means unknowable. The mystery itself, the actuality of existence, the actuality of the divine, the actuality of the eternal, the actuality of the infinite, the actuality of reality is entirely mysterious, impenetrable. We cannot know. Not, we don't know enough yet. It's unknowable by its nature. You can move toward it and you can become more and more aware of it. And eventually you can be one with it. That's what yoga means, the union. The absolute union. You're already one with it. You're already the unknown itself. You're already swimming in it. But that's not your experience. And we don't want you, and we don't ever talk in a way that suggests you should pretend like you're having that experience. You should actually have it. Until then, you experience what you experience. And as human beings, we tend to experience this whole different thing going on. But once you drop into the unknown more and more, then it's a question of, oddly enough, developing the abilities, the capabilities to move comfortably in that, rather than feel like you're drowning, rather than feel like you're confused, rather than feel like you've lost your bearings, your mooring. That's how it'll feel in certain moments. That's certainly how it feels in the beginning. It's not feeling that way to you because you've already passed through that. Previously, you were saying things like that. How disorienting it is, but it's no longer disorienting for you because you've hung out in it long enough and you've let yourself drop more and more into it. So it's intensifying. That's what you're describing. It's intensifying. You're letting the unknown swallow you more whole. And that's the right direction. And you'll have very, very surprising reports in the future. You'll see things and experience things that'll be really unsayable in words, but you'll do your best to give the rest of us some taste of it. It's absolutely, though, the thing to know is it's absolutely the right direction. Don't get, even for a second, and it doesn't sound like you are, but this is kind of this is inoculation. Even for a second, don't let yourself worry, because you will get swallowed up by it to the point where you disappear. And then the potential for joy, the potential for ecstasy, the potential for the moment-to-moment awareness and living out of the oneness of everything becomes actually available to you. That potential starts to manifest, and that's exactly the direction you're going. Now, everybody's on that journey in one form or another. You're just a good example of the form of it where it's about the unknown itself. It's about entering into the unknown. The way you walk into a jungle and it gets thicker and thicker and everything starts to change because now you don't even know at what point you entered in. It's too far away. You've gone too far into the center, toward the center of it, that whole environment. becomes more familiar to you. When you were standing at the edge, it was ominous, but once you're in it and used to it and you have your bearings, you know what it all amounts to. You kind of calm down, and that's the phase you're in. You're not afraid of it anymore. You probably don't remember, a couple of years ago, you were reporting the fear that goes along with entering into the unknown for real, letting it have you. But that fear is gone. That's why you're moving so deeply, so fast. So at this point, trusting your own intuition, your own wisdom, I'm looking for a word, but I'm not sure if there is one, because it's more than wisdom, it's more than intuition. Trusting whatever your gut tells you will be absolutely the right way to go. You will not make a mistake doing that, because your gut will tell you, turn left here, for example, when it'll seem counterintuitive, like that would not be a good idea. Your mind will tell you that's not a good idea, but your gut will say it's absolutely the right way. Trust your gut. You're getting to the point where you aren't going to need me much. So it's very exciting. But there's many, many unknowns ahead. In other words, you'll experience things you never imagined. Things will open up, dimensions will open up that are not imaginable ahead of time. You'll see. And you'll tell everybody else, and that will give them confidence that they can travel into the deep jungle safely too. Right now, you're still the leader of the pack. It's good because it gives other people confidence that this experience of the mystical itself, that this is actually a journey that's very daunting and scary for people. Everybody. Nobody doesn't go through the terror of it when they start to experience this is actually freaking real. This is not like some mental trip. This is not like, oh, I just get all ooey gooey. This is reality itself becoming more tangible. And it's very different from what we're taught reality is. We're taught reality is the physical reality. That's the antithesis of what's actually so. So as you come out of that trance, and as you tackle the fears and anxieties of seeing more clearly, of the mist dispersing, and you see that it's nothing what I was told, and it's nothing what I thought, and it's nothing of what people generally believe, and it's nothing of what I've experienced ever before. That's quite startling. Deer in the headlights feeling of like, what's going on here? And what have I gotten myself into? So it's very good that it's always somebody is leading the way spiritually in all these different ways we can approach. Because then everybody else gets to see that no matter how daunting it is or how scary it feels, it actually is safe. It actually is the right way to go. It actually is real. The journey into the unknown is more real than this table and sitting in this room. Right now, your mind is under the delusion due to how we're taught, how we're conditioned, that you're actually sitting in a room. You actually believe that in a profound way, but you're not sitting in a room. The room is the illusion. You're sitting in the infinite. You're sitting in the center of reality itself, which doesn't have any walls, doesn't have any light fixtures, isn't furnished with tables and chairs. It is absolutely the actual reality. The problem is when we define the wooden chair and the skin and the vegetation and the atmosphere, when we define that as reality, that's like sitting on a boat and defining it as dry land. It's just not the truth. It's just not the nature of what's going on. So it's always the unknown, because the divine and the infinite and the eternal, those are all synonymous. Those are all one thing. Is the unknown itself. This is just the part we think, the experience you're having right now is just the little tiny peephole part you think you know. So that's the illusory aspect. That's what the Hindus call Maya. It's all illusion. Well, it is illusion. It's real illusion. It's actually illusion. It's not some fuzzy idea like maybe it's kind of illusory. It's literal illusion, mirage. It isn't the reality. It appears to be the reality, but that's because you're programmed to believe that. When you start stepping out of that, which is the spiritual path, the spiritual journey is more and more towards reality. All definitions get blown to bits because all the definitions we've been given are based on a material view of life. At least in our world, in our time, in our culture, the base definitions are material, and they don't apply to this spiritual life. They only apply to tables. You're not a table. You're not an animated table. You're not a table with consciousness. You're something else. Okay.
I just wanted to say momentarily a couple times this week, my mind, I wanted to see if I could believe in the illusion again and see let me just see if I could believe in it again. But I couldn't do it because it's just too real, I guess. So
it's like smelling fish. Once you smell fish, you can't ever convince yourself that fish smells sweet. You can try to believe it, but you won't succeed. That's what I mean by visceral. You got to smell it. You got to take reality, the unknown, the beyond, the divine has to be bitten into. You have to smell it. It has to ring in your ears. It has to be churning in your stomach. It can't just be this, because a lot of us have this idea that it's kind of a rarefied, transcendent understanding. That's a philosophical approach, goes nowhere. It's a living thing.
Swamiji, we have questions from Arvada and Frank.
Since I think I've never seen Frank and he's new, he gets priority.
Frank, could you go to the
New
question,
guests
please?
get treated like head of the line. Go to the head of the line, because it's scary to come up here.
It's very scary.
Welcome to my world.
So I wanted to return back to your initial comments about the acorn and the potential and so forth. And I apologize. We're new to this experience. My wife is with me today, and
Welcome.
thank you. So, apologies if we're covering ground that's already been covered. But I'm taking the
Nothing to apologize for.
good the comments about the acorn and potential, and that we already know we pretty much is all in us. One of my reactions to that was, well, I don't think that negates the need for education or getting degrees or learning things. You got to still elicit it, as you say, but putting into context what you were saying, even though we have these potentials, I'm thinking about one of the things that my wife and I are doing right now is trying to be more conscious about our planning rather than letting things just happen to us. And so, in fact, we're down here in Southern California from Northern California because we planned this trip and we did a Google search. We found out about you and it sounded interesting, and it is very interesting. So I'm wondering if you can comment on, the sort of this idea that we don't want to wait around and let things happen. There's got to be some kind of active effort to direct our lives and figure out where we're going.
Sure. Are you spiritually seeking?
Yes, but a beginner. Is that really me in that picture? It's awfully gray hair.
Welcome to the Gray Hair Club. So, having come this far, you're not really a beginner. On one hand, we're all beginners. On the one hand, the only intelligent, the only wise approach is to always see yourself as a beginner. The most advanced are genuinely still beginners. We're all beginners forever. If the unknown really is unknowable, then how can we be anything but beginners? On the other hand, because you're sincere and because you're doing what you're doing, it's a little bit not 100% accurate to think of yourself as a beginner, because you've taken the initial steps. A real beginner is the one who is about to take the first step, the one who is about to step forward, step out. You've done the amazing action of stepping out. So you're feeling unsure. That's why you think about and talk about planning, and the way you're holding it is a result of how scary it is and how we naturally feel unsure when we start stepping out from our comfort zone, from the conventional, from what everybody else thinks is the right way to live. You started the grandest experiment there is. The experiment of moving toward what really matters. So, as that progresses, as that unfolds, as that becomes more and more in view, you'll see very much for yourself that you haven't made any mistakes, that it wasn't the wrong thing to do, that you haven't gone out on a limb, so to speak, and put yourself in a precarious position. It'll feel like that because it's a process of undoing. It's a process of removal. This is what I want you to understand. What you're embarking on and what you've embarked on, and it's correct, is not you're going to be finding something new and then doing that or adding that or living that. It's you're getting rid of. It's garbage removal. You're getting rid of everything that amounts to conditioned way of seeing and feeling and pre-programmed and beliefs, in essence, belief systems. You'll see that it's a process of stepping away from beliefs and into only accepting it as right for you if you can really know it for yourself through experience. So we love that you've begun. That's our whole purpose, the whole mission of this organization, what I do, why everyone is here, why we're all here, is to support that, to assist with that, to encourage that, because you do need, you need a cheerleader, you need a coach, you need I don't mean coach in the sense people talk about life coaching, I mean coach in the sense of somebody who can assure you that you're not taking missteps, that none of this is going to end up with you regretting that you stepped out this way. And this is vital for everybody. Everybody who is searching for what's more real has to have that encouragement. It's hard to get, it's hard to find. And you have to understand that you won't get it from worldly sources, because the worldly sources encourages you to stay with the herd and be loyal to the conventional, because that's where safety is. But that's false promise. There's no safety in that. It just means you'll never get to anything real. So be confident is what I'm saying. Be confident that this decision, and that's what you're describing, as a couple, it's commendable that you have each other's support. I mean, it's very meaningful. Not every couple can do this as a couple. You will not end up in a situation where you regret that you took this step. You will more and more see the rightness of it, because this is how the spiritual path unfolds, by making a conscious choice to move toward it. And that actually means there'll be inconveniences, there'll be expenditures, there'll be changes, there'll be problems to solve, and plans to be made, and decisions to be taken, all the things you're talking about. So I think you're doing great. From that description is enough. I don't need the details to know that you're doing great, and you're certainly on your way. But understand very, very clearly that the spiritual path is real. Has many forms, but there's only one spiritual path. And it doesn't mean that guy's way or her way or this tradition's way. It means that the underlying nature of things is uniform. It's not random. The one spiritual path manifests in different traditions, in different eras, in different cultures, in different ways. But it's all the same thing if it's the true spiritual path. You're searching for the true spiritual path, and every step you take is the right step. What you're really asking for, literally, is encouragement that it's okay to make these decisions, that we're not doing it the wrong way, that we can consciously plan, rather than this kind of new age, a little more airy-fairy idea that you're just supposed to let it happen and it's supposed to kind of come to you and you go with the flow. That doesn't work. That's wishful thinking. That's the irresponsible approach, the lazy approach, the approach that says there's no work for me to do. Spiritual path is arduous because there's so much work. You have to work on yourself. You have to work on how you relate to other people. You have to work on how you relate to life. You have to do all those things on that list of making the decisions, taking the actions, enduring the inconveniences, changing your life if that's what ends up being necessary, and not changing anything if that's what becomes necessary. It all becomes more in focus as you proceed. So you have my 100% support. You really do. This is what I live for. And you absolutely are not making any mistakes. So yes, make responsible decisions based on your intelligence. It's not supposed to be lightning striking.
Thank you. Those are good answers and answered questions I didn't even know I was asking. But
You were very clear. You were very.
No, they were questions I wanted answers to. I just didn't know I was asking them. Thank you.
That's my job. I don't have the answers. My job is to assist you in your attempt to bring out your answers and what's the right way for you to go. That's my job. My job is not to be the wise one who pontificates and says, yes, it's so, or yes, grasshopper, you know. It's literally simply to help you navigate. And that's all based on what you want, what's right for you, and what you've decided. So my response to you is not going to be the same as my response to someone else, because it's so fascinating that the spiritual path is not only quite real, and there's really only one, even though there's many iterations of it, but it's also completely impersonal. It's just is what it is, and at the same time it's completely personal. You go your way because you're a unique individual, and you'll experience the actual spiritual path the way you do, which is not the same the way she does, or he does, or she does. Just like life. You're having one experience, your neighbor's having another experience, because everybody is unique and in a different perspective. So we're all exactly the same, and we're all completely different. But the whole reason that I'm sitting here is exactly because of you, exactly to support and assist in any way you'll allow me in what you've embarked on. That's literally how this mission began 14 years ago. For want of a better way to say it, God spoke to me and said, make yourself available to people spiritually. Those are the exact words. I'll never forget it, because God had never spoken to me before. And when God speaks to you, so to speak, because it's not like a voice in the sky, you don't forget that. You literally remember the exact words. And I've said this 100 times in these 14 years. The exact words were, make yourself available to people spiritually. Now, it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, because it wasn't in the sky, but it was out of the blue. And looking back, there were a lot of indicators going on in the recent to that, for 6 months prior to that it kind of does line up, but odd things that were happening out of the blue, people coming up to me out of nowhere. But it isn't any more complicated than that. It's not my job to tell you how to live. It's not my job to take you to God. In the grand sense, it is. But my job is the job God gave to me, which is make yourself available to people spiritually. So that takes every form and color and nuance and possibility that could ever happen, because it's not a teaching, it's not a philosophy, it's not a theology, it's not a mass production thing. It's person by person. What's right for you? What do we need to understand? What can I assist you with that will help you go where you're trying to go? That's how I interpret. I mean, assist means, to me, assist means assist in any way you can, and make yourself available to me suggest assisting. It means other things too, and other things happen besides what you might rightly call assisting or attempting to assist. But don't have any weird ideas that I'm somehow different from you. Anybody who does what I do is different from other people. I'm not sitting on some Buddha cloud, and I'm not a high consciousness. I've just been given a job, and the ability to do it. That all comes from literally directly from God. A human being is not enough to make a difference on that level. But if God gives you a job, in other words, sees you as usable, what choice do you have? It'll never make sense. You'll see if it happens to you. It'll never make sense to you. You'll never believe that God would say, you're to do this, because you know that you're just an ordinary person. You know your flaws, and you know your weaknesses, and you know that you're not some high being. But if you really can know confidently and without the slightest doubt that that's God commanding you, that's God requiring you, you can't really argue too much. You can't really take a position of, oh, I'm unworthy. You can't pretend like God doesn't know better than you. You can't say, oh, God must have made a mistake. How could it be me? That's how you feel. But you can't take that position, because that's an insult to God. Then you are shirking your responsibility that's been made clear to you. I'm not saying this because some of you might get that divine command at some point in your life. I'm not saying it to explain myself better. I'm saying it because everybody is in this position if you're a living human being. God is always trying to message you. Life itself is a series of messages from every direction, from every encounter, from every source. Every experience is a message trying to clarify for you, trying to help you go in the right direction. Most people have the dial turned off. That's the conventional world. But for the world of spiritual seekers, you're trying to turn up the volume and tune in more precisely. And that happens along the way. Just expect the surprises that will bring. Don't be too shocked when something surprising gets experienced, because that's inevitable. When you suddenly are right at the exact right spot on the dial and the voice comes in clearly, that's like, whoa. So whether it's experienced as intuitive or as meant, you get it intellectually, or whether it's in your guts, or whether it's very rarefied and transcendent in how it's experienced or felt, no matter how it comes, what the nature of it is, it's more and more being willing to move in the direction of the will that's greater than your will. The intention that's divinely oriented and comes from a completely reliable source.
So you are out of time, but would you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Arvada, could you please go to the cushion?
I wanted to report and say thank you for the interaction you had with me at the workshop on Sunday. It like burst a bubble for me that I didn't have any awareness of, around tying, being conditioned to feel like shame around love, or around being loving or needing love, and it's having a big effect on things at the moment, and obviously having any sort of connection between love and shame is probably not something that's worth keeping. And I just noticed that there's actually, maybe that's all I should say, because it's maybe too soon to say anything else. There's yeah, maybe that's, I'm not sure about the rest of it yet.
So do what everybody has to do and see yourself as a full-fledged member of the human race. The way I define it, again and again, you've heard me say this for the last couple of years repeatedly, everyone deserves and requires massive assistance every day. Every single day. There's not a day in your life where you don't have massive needs of support and connection and help in all kinds of different forms. And somehow you're fed the idea in the conventional way of thinking that you're self-sufficient and you should be seeing yourself as making yourself more so. And nothing could be further from the truth. Every human being is massively in need of daily, profound contact with other people, with yourself, with what's inside you, which we tend to not be much in contact with in the Western culture. Everyone needs massive assistance all the time, is the shorthand way of saying it. That is not what you're taught in the everyday world. That is not what's accepted as the reality of a living human being. You're supposed to see yourself as, independent. There's nothing independent about a human being. You wouldn't even be here. It took two people to get together just for you to be here. How could you be independent? But what we miss, what's easy to miss because of how we're conditioned to think and feel and experience, is that it's a daily thing. It's an ongoing thing. No matter how much support and love and kindness and helping hand you received yesterday, today's another day and you need just as much. Everyone needs massive assistance all the time. We are completely interdependent on each other in a gigantic way that we have difficulty recognizing and therefore admitting just to ourselves, because we're conditioned on repeating it, because it bears repetition. It's hard to get. I've been saying it for years. Why? Because it's hard to get. I'm not saying anything I haven't said before many times. It's hard to get because every time you step out into the world, the opposite message is reinforced. You're a self-sufficient sole operator. You're not. You're profoundly connected to everything. You're arm in arm with everything that exists. Even that's not literally so, because it's even more intimate than that. All is one. But if you could just experience, which is easier, that you're arm in arm with everything else, then it's easier to see, and it's easier to accept, and it's easier to comprehend how we all need all the help we can get. And there's no shame in it. It's the opposite. You should be greedy for it. You should be grabbing for it. You should be asking for it. You should be willing to accept any help that can come your way from any direction and from any type of source. But the biggest source and the most immediate source, and the one that we yearn for and plug into the most readily, is other people. You will not find any deeper connection to God, and you will not find any way to reach truth for real without a much more profound involvement with other people in your life, without both a deeper connection with whoever crosses your path and without an expansion so that you allow more people to be involved with you. Quantity and quality, both. Those are turnkeys for expanding your consciousness, for moving forward spiritually. You cannot do it by yourself. You cannot do it sitting in a cave. If you just do it sitting in a cave, it won't hold. At the very least, if it were to gel, if it were to hold through those more traditional methods, it'll be tested when you're back with other people. And that'll show, that'll prove, that'll demonstrate whether there's anything real, whatever you got to, whether there's anything real in it or not, or you imagined it. Because the test is always other people. The test is always how you relate. The test is always what you bring to the table. That's both the test and the proof. That's both the method and the means as well as the demonstration. It's always, always, always related. Whatever else it's related to, whatever else is involved, it always is related to your relationships to other human beings. That's what you're referring to. I'm just giving you the deeper layer of it. And the layer that has to do with what does it mean? What's the practical application?
Thank you, Guruji.
Spiritual path is not about the profound. It's about the practical implementation of the profound. First, you have to reach the profound. What's more profound today than yesterday, this year than last year? First, you have to go deeper. But the part people often don't think about or aren't clear about is implementation. It's not enough to know more of the truth. What are you going to do with it? How do you implement it? How do you live it more? How does it come into play in whatever way is meaningful? Meaning always means, from the spiritual side, the conventional side, the material side, not necessarily. From the spiritual side, meaning always means and also the practicality. How do you bring it in? How does it change your life? How does it change how and who you are? How does it, it's not enough that it's in your heart. Oh, it changed in my heart. Now what? How's that gonna make a difference in a practical way? Whether it's for you or whether it's for someone else, or whether it's how you relate, or whether it's for the whole universe. That's not for you to determine. For you to determine is, if it means something, how's that manifested? How does that come out? What's the practicality? If it isn't practically applicable, if it can't be applied in real life, then it's just something mental. Then it's just another idea. It may be a lofty idea, but it isn't going to transform you, and it isn't going to have a betterment for everyone and everything. It isn't going to be part of the universal. If it's real and better for you and takes you forward, it's part of the universal. That's always the touchstone. So now we go all the way back to the beginning when I sat down and started talking. We can tie it off. So everything I was talking about initially is exactly that. To see yourself not as the world defines you, as a limited human being, but to see yourself as a manifestation of the universal itself. And that's exactly one correct definition. It's not the only one. But that's exactly one correct definition of a human being, which is a divine being. You are a manifestation of the universal, not an application of the individual. Do you have your unique individuality? Yeah, like the snowflakes. No two are exactly the same. But does that in any way negate the fact that you are the universal itself? No. The more you see yourself as the universal rather than the particular, the more you're moving higher, the more you're freeing yourself of ego, freeing yourself of inbred human selfishness, the more you're expanding your consciousness, literally. More universal, more conscious. You can fool yourself that you're reaching more consciousness, building higher, better, bigger consciousness. But that would be ego. You'll know it's true when it's more a feeling of smallness here instead of bigness, when you feel yourself more as part of the universal. That sounds like the right place to stop.